So Zach, let's dive right into it. I want to talk about these trades, and I want to talk about the roster limit because I think that might be behind a lot of teams' decision-making processes right now. The Kings are currently at 49 out of 50 allowable contracts, and they actually have 50 contracts out there. It's just that Jordan Spence's contract isn't counting towards that limit because he's playing in the QMJHL. So if you could sort of put my clumsy explanation a little bit more eloquently as to why the Kings traded guys that had cleared waivers for guys that had cleared waivers.
I think you could probably use that explanation to, with the Wolanin Amadio trade. You had a guy in Amadio that cleared waivers and a guy in Wolanin that cleared waivers on the Ottawa side. So it makes sense. You can kind of swap a contract for a contract in like a change of scenery type deal. You have a guy in Michael Amadio who's played some NHL games for the Kings, a very good player in the AHL with Ontario, had a little bit of success with the Kings, but he's in a position where the Kings have so many forwards, especially at center, that maybe there's a better opportunity for him in Ottawa. And then a player in Christian Wolanin who comes back. And at the time of the trade, Olli Maatta was hurt. You have the hit on Toby Bjornfoot after the trade, makes it look even smarter, considering that the Kings are a little bit light in left shot defensemen right now. Sean Walker is already playing on the left side, a little bit out of position, if you will. So it could be one of those deals that just works for both teams. And the contract limit is definitely a part of it where, the Kings can add a piece that they need while not taking up another spot, which gives them more flexibility down the road if they need or want to make another deal.
There's been a lot of talk that the Kings are looking for a dynamic, puck-moving, left-handed defenseman who's under the age of 25 and is available to be acquired, which, who isn't? Wolanin doesn't fit that description perfectly. I don't think he's under 25, and he's certainly not a top pair defenseman, but he is, in the best version of himself, dynamic and puck moving and left-handed. Do you suppose that played a role in choosing him of the available players to trade for?
I mean, it's hard to know exactly, what Christian Wolanin's market was or what Michael Amadio's market was or who's on the market. Like, I'd love to bring in a 160-point center under the age of 19 on a 10-year contract with a cap hit of less than $2 million. Love to bring that guy in, but that guy doesn't exist in any capacity. You get what you get. You can only acquire a player who a team wants to trade. And Christian Wolanin is a guy who has some good attributes. He was a very high-scoring defenseman in the AHL. You look at his numbers, he was in the top 5 in the league his year in points per game amongst defensemen. The only really full year, he played 40 games in the AHL. And he's a guy that if you can get him for, a player in Amadio who was a good player for the Kings, but at a position of strength, and then you can acquire a player in a position of need, if you will, I think you take that deal. And maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't. I think as Todd McClellan said, he hadn't really gotten enough of an impression of Wolanin yet to know how exactly he'd fit in. But I liked the deal from a Kings perspective. I think it's a good guy to bring in. He's kind of in the age group that the Kings need, in that group between the young guys coming up and the older group of 5 veterans. So I thought it was a pretty good move for the Kings.
Looking at Brendan Lemieux, everybody kept tweeting this same word, sandpaper. Over and over and over. He brings sandpaper. He brings grit. What do you know about him, Zach, and what could he possibly add? And there's also another random stat flowing around about how many penalties he's drawn as well. So that could actually prove good for the Kings power play. I'm not sure, but what do you know about him?
It's like not even close how many penalties per 60 minutes he's drawn compared to the guy in second. Like, he leads the league by far, almost like like over a half penalty more per 60 minutes that he draws than the second best guy of guys who have played like a legitimate number of games. And the reason I like this deal is that Brendan Lemieux has a skill set that nobody else on the Kings currently has among the forwards. He's an agitator. He's a pest, if you will, but he can play a regular shift too. Like, he's a guy who can contribute to the team as well. He's not a goon by any means. He's a guy who gets under the other team's skin. And at the cost of a 4th-round pick in a year when the Kings had 2 4th-round picks available, I thought it was a basically no-risk deal for the Kings that potentially fills an area of need in the bottom 6 with bringing in a guy who offers something that no one else is currently offering.
I've heard the Kings locker room described as quiet, um, which is not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just descriptive. And apparently, Brendan Lemieux is anything but quiet. And so, not only his play on the ice, but I think also just his sort of energy in the locker room, on the bench. I think for a team that's so clearly divided between veterans and basically rookies, I think it might be nice to have a guy with a couple years under his belt who draws a penalty, pounds the bench, pounds the boards when the team does something. So hopefully it will work out. Zach, the trade deadline is coming up. It's April 12th, so we're about 11 days out from the time of this taping. There have been a ton of rumors, obviously, for every team. But do you anticipate any major move coming from the Kings between now and the deadline?
I think the key for the Kings right now is that moves that are made to add, not to subtract. If you listen to or saw a recap of the State of the Franchise event that featured some comments from Rob Blake, the days of subtracting are gone. That's what the last two deadlines were for. You saw veterans like Martinez, Toffoli, Muzzin moved on over the last couple of years. The Kings have kind of pivoted now. They're on the upswing. The moves that they make from this point out are going to be made to add to what the Kings have. It's not, anymore, I don't think, of a fire sale. And, the conversations are happening, whether or not a big trade happens or not. I think, usually, it takes two to tango. So whether or not that right fit is available for the Kings, I think remains to be seen. There's a little bit of time still for those moves to come together. But I think if the Kings do make a move, I think it's going to be something that adds to the team, and likely not just adds to the team this year, like it was, Brendan Lemieux is under contract for next year too, and he's a young player who has value moving forward. It's going to be a player who adds to what the Kings have, not just now, but probably also down the road as well.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your time, Zach, as always, and we'll see you at Staples tomorrow night.
Looking forward to it. I'll keep the mute button off, and we'll see you guys then.
Bye, Zach.